business look like it's booming, man. All life achieving now with a new bank account.
Derek, it's a gone so good. Me say, me glad me not have to stuff the cash under my mattress no more. From me get my debit card, me just a tap and go through. Me even can check my account online or go through the bank app. Them even start telling me about some benefits me can get to my business. But every time me even look at my balance, it's like them charge me again. Me ask them about it and they must send me for go read terms and conditions. Like me have time to read an entire novel.
Miss Pat, I know fine print can feel like a puzzle with missing pieces. But guess what? You have rights as a bank customer, Miss Pat.
Rights? Mm-hmm. I will try to tell you about it. Because right now I don't feel like I have none.
No, man. So under the Banking Act, banks must treat you fairly and with respect. Them can't just fling fees for you like buy one, get two free, without explaining what they actually are.
So how come them put all of the important information on them, the fine writing, they like, you need a microscope to read it?
Well, that's the second right you have, which is access to clear information. If the fine print needs a microscope, you're supposed to break it down. Imagine you buy $1,000 credit. You put it on your phone and then you realize half of it missing in hidden fees. That don't make no sense, right?
Exactly. Because if me buy a certain amount of credit, me want all of it. You're saying I can demand them to explain these charges clearly?
Yes, you can. And if they still give it a runaround, you have a right to file a complaint. If you take it seriously, Miss Spot, that's like calling the principal when the teacher won't listen. That's why it's good to have a bank account, you know? Because you have all these channels of communication and people to talk to when you have issues compared to your mattress.
You know, me never think about it like that. Me just assume that the bank do what them feel like and we just have to take it. But now me know better.
Well, you have more powers than you know, Miss Spot. Can't keep you in the dark.
You know you're right. Mm-hmm. You know my plan for my March go back down there like a real boss. Yes. And if them plan to treat me with no fancy talking, they just remind them say, me have right.
That's right, Miss Spot.
Let's delve deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Orville Higgins and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yes.
Looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.
Tune in to Lead Story, weekdays at 6 p.m. Hosted by Jody-Ann Quarry.
Brought to you by
Horizon, a new loan product from Access Financial Services.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winford Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Every dream conquered is another dream game. I land and I fly again like a jet plane. Headed straight in your direction. 'Cause I'm wiser, one step closer. I'm winning 'cause I work so hard. And
send it on us.
What a guan?
What a guan?
That a go on, pa.
What a guan? What a guan?
What a Guan! Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. on CVM TV.
Let's delve deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Orville Higgins, and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yes.
Looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.
The style is no scammer, no style me.
From the market to the farm to the office, money talk is everywhere. But are you making sense or nonsense? The Bank of Jamaica brings you common sense with BOJ. Real stories, real laughs, and real lessons to help you protect, grow, and manage your money. Mattress savings.
At least my mattress, you charge me to sleep on it.
Partner plan.
Remember last year we needed our payouts early? But Miss Pam gave it to her cousin first.
Or a sketchy loan flyer.
Electrifying deals.
See why making the right financial choices is pure common sense. Brought to you by Bank of Jamaica, empowering everyday Jamaicans one episode at a time.
Grandpa, it's 2026. You can't keep hiding all your money in every single pocket forever.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Tune in to Lead Story. Weekdays at 6 p.m. Hosted by Jody Ann Quarry.
Brought to you by
Horizon, a new loan product from Access Financial Services.
Lead Story Prime, Budget Special, brought to you by.
Managing your investments with Sagicor is now easy as ever. Contact your wealth advisor to update your personal information.
Good evening and welcome to Lead Story or Budget Special. My name is Giovanni Dennis, and over the next week or so we'll be giving you a series of special Lead Story programs focused on the budget. Now, of course, since last week the budget debate began, Favour Williams, our finance minister, has presented the government's budget, and of course there has been a response from the opposition spokesman on finance, Julian Robinson. We'll be combing through their presentations tonight and getting reactions. We'll be having expert economists. We'll be having later on in the program the Deputy Dean for the Department of Economics at the University of the West Indies, as well as social and political commentator Newton Harris. A little later on we'll also be joined by Andrew McDaniel, an assistant lecturer in the Department of Government at the University of the West Indies, in studio, and then on Zoom we'll be joined by Catherine Silvera. She is the president of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association. Also, we'll be having a live studio audience. Some brilliant students from the University of the West Indies will be here, and they will also be putting questions to some of our panelists this evening, as we'll be taking a different approach to this program. But first, let us go to this overview from Nika Lewis that did, and this is the first one coming from the Finance Minister. Just a summary of her presentation in Parliament last week.
Committed to riding out any storm or geopolitical conflicts, the Finance Minister told Jamaicans they are safe with the Andrew Holness-led administration. This amid recent turmoil in the Middle East impacting global oil prices and on the heels of Hurricane Melissa last October. She says the nation boasts a strong net international reserve and is still in good standing.
You can bank on us. You have seen our performance, and we will take this nation safely through whatever the world throws at us, whatever the climate throws at us. We have the capability, we have the leadership to take Jamaica through any adversity.
Minister Williams says despite the impact of Hurricane Melissa, Jamaica managed to retain a strong credit rating from key international agencies. And although many doubted whether it would still be possible, the minister announced an increased income tax threshold come April 1.
I will remind Jamaicans that come April 1, the new threshold takes effect, 1.9 million threshold. And to say to our public sector workers as well, the government's offer remains on the table.
She also responded to concerns raised about the government's financial strategies and outlook, specifically addressing the Fiscal Commissioner's comments regarding inflation.
I want to call the Commissioner's attention to the fact that there is a lot of reconstruction activities happening all over Jamaica on the part of businesses and private people. Madam Speaker, the bottom line is CPI and GDP deflator are related, but not the same thing. In normal times, they track closely, and there's little difference. However, in the aftermath of an event like a Category 5 hurricane, where domestic production in certain areas has been decimated with scarcity influencing price of locally produced goods, and there's a surge in demand for reconstruction from citizens and businesses, we can have a wider than usual variance between CPI and the GDP deflator.
All right, so that was Finance Minister Favour Williams last Thursday, her opposition counterpart Julian Robinson responded, and here is an overview of what he presented in Parliament.
It falls short. The anthem echoed by opposition spokesman on finance Julian Robinson and his PNP colleagues in Parliament as Robinson made his rebuttal to the finance minister's proposed budget. From bashing Minister Favour Williams' proposed new tax measures as an additional burden on the poor and those hardest hit, to crafting his own alternatives to funding the post-disaster budget, Robinson says enough thought was not given to balancing the books with the needs of the people.
It falls short for the man in Mobile whose car was destroyed in the hurricane and who wants to get his taxi business back up and running.
And he might have a loan.
It falls short for the man in Katadupa, the farmer, who we need to produce so that we can import less and we can supply our hotels. And it falls short for the NHT contributors, whose monies continue to be diverted away from the institution it was meant to serve, by a government that once opposed that very practice.
Had the PNP been at the wicket, Robinson says these measures would instead be considered. An electronic invoicing system for the Tax Administration of Jamaica, TAJ, that he says would ensure better tax compliance and generate some $8.6 billion without a new tax. Robinson also cited a digital nomads program similar to one undertaken in Barbados, from which billions more could be generated each year. Additionally, beyond borrowing,
the government is projecting for this coming year to withdraw $9 billion from the Bank of Jamaica. We would take an additional $1 billion to bring the total to 10. Now, I want to make a distinction. This is not the NIR. These are surpluses that are generated from the profits of the BOJ. We also looked at other public bodies who have surpluses, and I looked at the FCJ with a net surplus of $3.14 billion and profits of $5.15. And we would do a transfer of $1 billion from there.
He also knocked the government for its continued withdrawal of funds from the National Housing Trust, a practice the Prime Minister recently said he hopes to end.
The government can mandate local manufacturers and importers to reformulate their products so that sugar content is reduced in those products and provide a time frame by which those manufacturers and importers do so, because it will obviously require some time to reformulate their what they produce. This would reduce the amount of sugar people consume, and the government can do that.
Adamant the government is hiding behind the hurricane, he says long before growth remained unimpressive at 1 to 2%. He notes it will take more than new taxes to help rebuild a stronger economy while ripping through perceived flaws in the new tax package. He poured over the sugary drinks tax.
All right, thank you so much, Nika Lewis, for that synopsis of the presentation of Opposition Spokesman on Finance, Julian Robinson. We now take a quick break here on Lead Story Budget Special. When we come back, we'll be doing some comparisons of both presentations and getting reactions from our expert panelists. Stay with us. This is Lead Story Budget Special.
The seed for potscapes was planted many years ago when by chance I acquired a few succulents and there was a gap in the market where persons were actually looking for a wide variety of succulents as well as guidance in succulent care. So I went through all the required steps to make the business a reality. The vision of Potscapes was to be an online plant store. To do so, we required an e-payment gateway. Sagicor Bank's e-payment system was very reliable and was a perfect fit for our business. My business blossomed when we established a storefront at 29 Upper Waterloo Road. My Sagicor business bankers supported me tremendously in the early stages and continue to do so. I received solid advice as how to navigate the business processes and to positively impact others through plans.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Welcome back to Lead Story Budget Special here on CVM TV. I'm Giovanni. So we just heard from the Minister of Finance, Favour Williams, and her opposition counterpart, Julian Robinson, in Parliament last week. We have with us here Andrew McDaniel, an assistant lecturer in the Department of Government at the University of the West Indies, Dr. Christine Clark, She is the Deputy Dean for the Department of Economics, as well as Newton Harris, who is a social and political commentator. And on Zoom, we have Catherine Silvera, the President of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association. Of course, we had introduced as well in segment 1 our students from the University of the West Indies. We have 4 students from the University of the West Indies, and you may be wondering why I have these in my hand. I'll explain them right now quickly. So this is in case they agree with what is being said by our panelists and they have no questions, comments or concerns. This is in case they partially agree, and this is if they don't agree and wish to raise an issue, not just from our panelists as well, but also what was presented in Parliament. And so it's a way to ensure that we are all on the same page, that everyone understands what's happening with the budget and the issues being raised. Let's start with you, Dr. Clark. Your reactions to the finance minister's presentation, how the budget was framed. Is it a credible budget?
Well, thanks for having me. The budget as presented, I think we have seen and heard a lot about it in terms of the fact that this is the first time both sides of the budget are being presented. The tax measures or the revenue measures have been presented alongside expenditure, which I think we can agree is a step forward in the right direction from a governance perspective. So I think that led us to Tuesday's presentation by the minister. Everybody wondering, so what would she possibly have to say now? Because we're used to hearing the measures on what would have been Tuesday in the past. I think the minister is trying to chart a new course in the discourse around the budget and to not have it be a total surprise to persons at the beginning of the budget debate. I think they want to have sufficient clarity about where they are earlier in the game than is normal, and that will help, as I'm sure Catherine will speak about the consultations that are now happening. Perhaps industry would have preferred a lot of these consultations before. However, we can see where clearly if there were challenges with the consultations, then the presentation would have been further challenged, because then what would you present as the budget?
Yeah, you mentioned Catherine Silvera, who is on Zoom, and we'll be going to her momentarily. But let's take a quick look at the framing of the budget by both our parliamentarians. So Favour Williams focused on reconstruction and resilience after Melissa, and Julian Robinson, he says that the budget budget framed as inadequate and business as usual despite the national disaster that was Hurricane Melissa. That was a major talking point from his presentation. I want to now bring on Catherine Silvera, President of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association. Ms. Silvera, when we spoke last Monday, one of the things you said you wanted was further clarity, especially on the sugary drinks tax. You also raised some other issues. Have your issues been answered by Favour Williams?
No, they haven't. So we are still in consultation with the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Health as it relates to both the tax on sweetened non-alcoholic beverages as well as the environmental levy. I think those are two major revenue measures that she announced that affect manufacturing, and we are still in consultation with both ministries trying to come to a clear conclusion. Certainly for the environmental levy, as it stands right now, the proposal is causing a 113% increase to manufacturers, while it is only causing a 60% increase to importers. And so that, in essence, is going to definitely put manufacturers on a back foot and doesn't seem to have us on equal playing ground when it comes to imported items.
Yeah. What were you hoping to hear from her that you didn't?
Well, I think that we still wanted some questions answered as it relates to the sugary tax. But as I said, we are in consultation. So I suppose that really could not have happened in Tuesday's budget presentation, as the technical working group did not meet until Wednesday. So we do hope that we will come to a compromise before the Minister of Finance next goes to close the budget.
Yeah, and just as a preview before the Prime Minister speaks again, what are some of the issues that were discussed in that meeting last week that you had with government officials?
Well, primarily the tax as it stands right now, the SCT on sweetened non-alcoholic beverages does not leave any room for manufacturers to reformulate. It is a straight across the board tax regardless of what the sugar content is. And so we are saying as manufacturers, let us follow models that have been presented or by other governments in other countries, suggesting, for example, the UK model, in which it incentivizes manufacturers to reformulate because they have a model where if the item has added sugar of 8 grams or less per 100 milliliter, there is actually no tax. And so that is something that incentivizes manufacturers to reformulate, to have a lower sugar product. And that is something that I think, through Ministry of Health or for consumers that we do want to see happen, because we want to provide healthier beverages for consumers. And if consumers are drinking something that has lower sugar, then there isn't that much of a health crisis. And so we are saying that we should be following models that other countries have developed, learning from what they have developed, because you have, Mexico, the UK that have introduced these taxes 8 years ago. So we can learn from that. We can implement something that is not going to be as onerous as what is currently being proposed. And currently, because we know that the government has introduced this as a revenue measure, but currently, approximately 90% of the beverages that are manufactured and imported would fall above that threshold. So they would collect the revenue measures in the first year or two if it is that they do adopt a similar structure to the UK. But it does still allow manufacturers a timeline to be able to reformulate and produce less sugar drinks.
And so that's an ongoing discussion that's happening as well. It was framed by Favour Williams as a syntax, partly as a public health policy, but Julian Robinson rubbished that notion, saying he's arguing that the $10 billion revenue projection proves that it is mainly a revenue measure. This is the tax on sugar drinks. For you, Andrew McDaniel, what were you hearing? What were you wanting to hear from the Finance Minister?
Well, what I wanted to hear is a comprehensive rundown of how the government plans to approach this new recovery phase that they plan to enter into following the hurricane. Because, of course, this budget is not a standard budget. We expected a detailed and a comprehensive description of how they plan to approach expenditure as it relates to spending on certain critical areas following the hurricane, especially the tourism sector, how they plan to address the damages to schools in the western areas of the island. And of course, they did identify $18 million, I believe, towards repairing some of those schools in the western areas of the island. And I think they could have done a little bit more in terms of how they explain how they would approach the rebuilding process in the western areas, especially as it relates to housing. And I know the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, they're currently undertaking that roof program that the Minister, Colonel Charles Jr., is currently leading in terms of how they plan to reconstruct some of these houses in the western areas of the island. So I believe that the budget presentation could have also included that and some of the expenditure that would have been allocated to that program in particular.
We have about 30 seconds before the break. For you, Newton Harris, what did you want to hear from Favour Williams?
I wanted to hear from the Minister some of the, not a comprehensive, but some more specifics as to how the budget might be spent. But I know that because of the nature of the parliamentary debate, she's opening the debate. So I suspect that a lot of those loose ends might be tied up when she closes. But I also anticipate that the Prime Minister will take a huge bite of the cherry in terms of the overall rebuilding through the NARA. And I hope we have some more time to talk about that soon.
We will talk about that soon when we come back, but we do have to go to our second break here on a Lead Story Budget Special. When we come back, we'll be biting into much more, as Newton Harris just mentioned, about the budget presentation so far from the Finance Minister Favour Williams and her opposition counterpart Julian Robinson. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
your journey with a Jane Bank Small Business Loan, with small business loans with as little as $10,000 and up to $4 million.
The time is 8:30.
Let's delve deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Arthur Higgins, and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yes.
Looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.
Welcome back to Lead Story Budget Special here on CVM TV. I'm Giovanni Dennis. We are simplifying the budget that was presented in Parliament and getting reactions from various stakeholders to the presentations of Favour Williams and Julian Robinson so far in Parliament. We've been getting initial comments so far, and I want to kind of shift gears a bit now to go into this matter of the National Housing Trust, the drawdowns from the National Housing Trust. It has somewhat become a political football, if you will. Mr. Harris, your thoughts on the continued drawdown and the PNP's criticism of the continued drawdown, given that the drawdown began under a PNP administration some time ago?
I think it's very interesting that it continues to be used as a political football. I think in this instance, I think the reason is justified. The context having been set by the panel, the worst disaster in Jamaica's history. I think if this is not a good enough reason to actually draw down on the funds without having to look elsewhere to fund, so we're not talking about additional taxation elsewhere. So understanding that the fund was created for a particular purpose, but that it has indeed been drawn down, funds have been drawn down, yes, but in this particular budget, I think there's a good enough justification after Melissa that it should be. I think what I heard the Prime Minister explain, or additional context provided the other day, is that were the funds to stay there, they would not be of significant use to the fund in any event.
Well, what Julian Robinson is saying is that the government needs to stop pulling the 11.4 billion from the NHT and use that money instead to develop shelter for people in need. Is that a sufficient or a fair critique, you think, Andrew McDaniel?
Not quite, because the mandate is a matter of providing affordable housing and community development. Now, I understand that you want to approach it from a disaster risk reduction or disaster risk management approach because of the hurricane in terms of providing shelter, but that is not entirely the mandate of the National Housing Trust in terms of providing affordable housing. Now, of course, you do want your bodies like ADPM or so on to assist you in terms of providing suitable shelters for persons whenever there is a natural disaster to the extent of a hurricane, Melissa Category 5 hurricane. But the National Housing Trust simply was not designed for that particular purpose. But I am inclined to agree with the opposition spokesperson on finance to the extent that the government has been a bit hypocritical in the sense of the drawdown and how money has been extracted from the National Housing Trust. Because here's the thing, the National Housing Trust is considered a public body, and if it is that the contributory scheme that is National Housing Trust provides for the government additional revenue, and it's been a long criticism that NHT has been overfunded, if it is that the government wants to use some of that surplus now to fund the budget, I don't see the big issue. And the PNP, of course, made a case for it when they initially did it, and successive administrations under the PNP and the JLP ever since has continued that drawdown, making the case that they can now use some of that surplus to continue to fund the budget. So I don't understand exactly why it's continued to be a significant issue for them in terms of how they've debated it over the years. I still can't get it.
Yeah, Dr. Clark, one of the alternative proposals from Julian Robinson was the implementation of an electronic invoicing system for tax administration Jamaica. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, that is one part of public finance as well as public procurement that can always generate some results. The fundamental question is just about how much it's going to cost to implement this, because it's not going to be costless, neither on the government side nor on the businesses side. If in the last go-around of administrative reform, if they did not implement one of those full-scale software systems that could now, include that API, then it means that businesses will have to upgrade their software, maybe even hardware, to facilitate all of the interactions that will need to happen with tax administration. So I think administrative reform is definitely, the minister would welcome something like that, but it's not free, it's not costless. So there are costs both on the government side as well as businesses to conform with whatever that requirement will look like. It will yield additional revenue, of course, that is simulated to the extent of which. But we have done some amount of custom reform, so we have the ASICUDA, we have the pre-indication of what is coming in, and then there's what is being produced. So it is probably quite feasible.
And just for my viewers, I'm just putting up a quick red thing. What does ASICUDA
Sorry, the ASICUDA is the system that, in essence, operates at the port, so that when you're importing on a large scale, you have to declare what will come in before it actually hits the port. Yes. So there's some amount of control already of some aspect of the information. It may just be about synthesizing and bringing this all together so that for each, whether manufacturer, importer, however it works, you'll be able to see that at the higher level in tax admin.
Yeah. This is just one of several counter proposals presented by Julian Robinson. What did you make of his overall presentation? And I just want quick reactions from all of you on this.
I think he made some suggestions that I think the ministry is worth considering. I mean, such as the one you just raised. He did raise one about the Bank of Jamaica and drawing down there, but we know that that is not quite feasible now. If we recall, in 2020, the bank was given operational independence.
Could you pause right there?
Sure.
So it's not quite feasible right now to draw down from the Bank of Jamaica. Let me go to your students, actually, Dr. Clark.
You're trying to get...
Why is something like this not feasible? Do you agree with Dr. Clark that's not feasible to do any drawdowns from the BOJ? And when you're speaking, just introduce yourself and go ahead, yeah.
Nevada Lewis, Masters of Fiscal students at the University of the West Indies. I'm inclined to agree with Dr. Clark.
Is it because she's a lecturer?
Yes, definitely, but also because the Bank of Jamaica has been given independence re its governance and how it operates, how it handles its funds and the decisions regarding same. So making a decision unilaterally to draw down from the Bank of Jamaica is not that simple.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that from any of you? No differing thoughts? Everybody think the same way? They do say great minds think alike. I won't say what the rest of that quote says though. He also spoke about drawing down from the Airports Authority of Jamaica and also transfer 1 billion from the Factories Corporation. The rationale is, and 1 billion as well from the BOJ, and do not transfer the $2 billion to the Airports Authority that they should get for the new corporate headspace, to delay that just a bit. Question, do you agree with his criticism of the sugary drinks tax? Newton Harris.
The sugary drinks tax is a very interesting measure that has its genesis in the Ministry of Health and trying to create a healthier society. But the fact that how it has been introduced, I think, has ruffled some feathers, especially in the manufacturing sector. But we need the revenue for this year. So to reformulate, to do the other, to carry it out another way would be, I think, it would take more time than the time we have to generate the revenue. That is my thought on the matter. It can be done another way. It has been done other ways in other jurisdictions. But the fact that we need the measure, we need to generate the revenue now, I think it's a low enough hanging fruit that it is feasible. And we can talk about reformulation. We can talk about other ways about achieving the health aim later. But it does do the two things. And I think which is generate the revenue and stimulate the behavior change.
Yeah. And your thoughts on his overall presentation and the issues that he raised, the counter proposals and stuff like that?
I think both the minister and the spokesperson gave sober presentations. So I'm grateful as somebody in this generation for a budget, revenue measures and budget being presented and counter proposals that don't have all the just vibes elements. And so the sober presentations, I think young people appreciate that. I think it signals a maturing of our political system, of our governance, of our fiscal policy. I think young people like that. And I'm expecting to see more greens over there. Thank you. But I do think that there are many things that are worth considering.
I should say as well, the green is just a universal symbol of I agree with something and for no other reason.
Yes.
We've just used that for clarity. Before we go to the break, I want to bring in Catherine Silvera on this. What did you make of the opposition's presentation and some of the counter proposals?
Hi, Giovanni. Unfortunately, you're on mute, so I can't hear anything.
All right, so we'll be sorting that, and I'll just reframe the question to you, Catherine Silvera. What did you make of Julian Robinson's presentation? Are you hearing me now?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. What did you make of Julian Robinson's presentation and some of the counter proposals that he put forward?
I thought that it was a good counter proposal, to be honest. The first measure that he spoke about was enhancing the tax collection measures, and I think that's a sore point for a lot of compliant companies. We feel that we are the companies that are compliant, our individuals that are compliant, we turn over our PAYE, we turn over our corporate income tax, we are the companies that are audited by the tax administration. And so one of the measures he spoke to was having the tax administration implement a system in which there will be an invoicing system. And that, I would hope, would make a lot more companies, individuals be compliant with paying over their taxes and widening the tax base. And I think that is something that we would like to hear more on from the government as to how it is that they are going to seek to collect taxes from non-compliant sources in Jamaica.
Yeah, we have a minute to the break. Catherine Silvera spoke about the environmental level. From our viewers, could you just explain what something like this is and how this would work, Dr. Clark?
So I think what they're referring to in essence is a charge that is placed on the usage of our ports, bringing in things, or the other way. So it's just like you'd pay GCT at the border. It's one of those fees that normally has to be paid, even if it's a barrel you're bringing in. It's for that
manufacturers and exporters are crying about this. So I hear Ms. Silvera repeating it about the 2 or 3 times I went to her just now. Is it a fair critique of it?
Critique is fair. I mean, remember, they want to have the lower the cost that they incur. It's the more viable their product is in the international marketplace. So this is something that they will always be, interested in having adjusted.
Yeah, we do have to go to the but I just want Ms. Silvera to comment finally. You're saying the environmental level that will make businesses not competitive. How exactly? Why did you say this in about 30 seconds, Ms. Silvera?
Well, because they are seeking to propose to increase the base of the manufacturer's sales. So ideally, or what they're implementing is that this tax would now be imposed upon the manufacturer's markup. Whereas when it's imposed on an importer, it is imposed at the port, which is at the landed cost. The importer's markup then goes on after it. And so we're saying that is not an equal playing ground for a manufacturer. And this tax is also imposed upon exports. And usually, a government doesn't want to impose taxes upon exports because these items are leaving the country to earning foreign exchange.
Right. I do know we want to have just one or two more questions for you in the final segment, Ms. Silvera, so please don't leave just yet. Stay on. We take our final break here on Lead Story Budget Special. So many issues to discuss. I haven't even touched the surface of everything yet, and we are almost out of time, but we'll try to get through as many as we can in our final segment. Stay with us here on CVM TV Lead Story Budget Special.
Style me.
From the market to the farm to the office, money talk is everywhere. But are you making sense or nonsense? The Bank of Jamaica brings you common sense with BOJ, real stories, real laughs, and real lessons to help you protect, grow, and manage your money. Mattress savings.
At least my mattress. You charge me to sleep on it.
Partner plan.
Remember last year we needed our payouts early? But Miss Pam gave it to her cousin first.
Or a sketchy loan flyer.
Electrifying deals.
See why making the right financial choices is pure common sense. Brought to you by Bank of Jamaica, empowering everyday Jamaicans one episode at a time.
Grandpa, it's 2026. You can't keep hiding all your money in every single pocket forever.
Watagwan.
Watagwan.
Datagwan pa.
Watagwan. Watagwan.
Watagwan. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. on CVM TV.
Datagwan pa. Watagwan.
Welcome back to our final segment of Lead Story Budget Special. Now, the opposition spokesman on finance, Julian Robinson, also presented what he called a digital nomad program. And we do want to get some reactions from our panelists, but also we are getting a reaction from Kristen as well, and Econ Student. What did you think of that proposal, Kristen?
Well, the proposal was that they would implement a sort of visa so that foreigners could come here, work online, and live in Jamaica. So this could be a good thing. It would produce some revenue, but if they invite too many people, of course, this is going to raise housing costs and other costs, because those foreigners who work online, they tend to earn, say, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 US a month, and compared to our local salaries, this will tend to raise prices for everyone. So this could be a good idea, but it depends, of course, on how many visas they actually let people buy.
Yeah. So all four of your students agreed with you when you spoke earlier. Do you agree with her, Dr. Clark?
Yes, that is certainly one of the areas that we would have to look out for. I mean, we know that we have undersupply or supply of housing hasn't ever been able to meet the projected or estimated demand. And so it is possible in the scenario, which is what we would expect. You would expect that it would be attracting persons earning at a certain level so they can, stimulate the economy. But in doing that, they could actually be worsening that dimension of the problem. So we'd have to know how we would address that. And of course, there are other challenges. What do we have to provide in terms of infrastructure to make this actually feasible and seamless for persons who would want to come here and take up something like that?
Quick thoughts, Harris. Good idea, bad idea? 10 seconds.
An idea worth considering, but not so great in the current context with the housing market, etc. And the destruction of a lot of the infrastructure in a lot of the places that tourists would want to settle. So,
timing wise,
timing
could be
it
too soon.
A little too. We're not ready for it quite yet.
Do you agree with that, Andrew McDaniel?
Good idea, but I also want to address one of the questions Dr. Clark asked just now in terms of the infrastructure, and it's very much correct in what we have to provide, because I think when I heard the proposal, I thought to myself, are we overestimating our digital infrastructure in terms of what we have available, in terms of the internet coverage, bandwidth, and the speed that we can provide as well?
Yeah,
it's a digital nomad program.
That's actually
fundamental. I know he spoke about freelancers as a job, but we also have to consider some of the jobs that these individuals are performing once they enter the island.
But with Starlink, would that be so much of an issue? Because Starlink is independent of digital and flow, because it's only you're shading digital and flow fairly. So, by the way, I'll accept. But Starlink is a viable option.
Yeah, but how far-reaching is the coverage of Starlink so far? I mean, would they have to come with their own Starlink provisions or imports ready for them once they get here? Because where they being housed, such as the places that we're worrying about the rent prices, where they being housed, do they have Starlink already installed, or do they have the usual providers in digital and flow?
Yeah, it's certainly something worth considering. Let's not for a discussion that has to keep going. But my producer has been speaking to me for the past 2 minutes. We have some very important statements that we'll now read out, and all our panelists and our in-studio audience, they all have their red. Hold it up. Just hold up a red one. Red one's the red indicator whether they agree with something or not. Green, and that's a no, don't agree. Green, agreed. And yellow, partially agreed. So going to the first statement right now, let's bring up this first statement. Quick answers. This budget punishes the poor. Let me see. Let me see. Andrew McDaniel partially agrees. Newton Harris does not agree. What's your one? I'm looking for you.
Giovanni.
What's?
I would have been
partially agree.
I don't think.
Partially agree. Partially agree. Don't agree. Don't agree.
With explanation.
I want to hear from my students. Why don't you? Why do you partially agree? What reservations do you have?
Well, when you look at the budget, and especially the taxes on the sugary drinks, that is something that low-income households tend to purchase more. As much as it is a behavioral tax, it's a case where are they going to change their habits? Right? And what about import substitution? Why don't we as Jamaicans create our own drinks, or natural drinks? I heard the Minister Green talk about the tomato beverages in the schools, but that doesn't sound very pleasing.
So I'm going to say the tomato drinks don't have any risk to it.
Yeah, so we need to, add our own little flavor to it, our own Jamaican flavor.
And market it to especially gain imports and export profits. You don't agree with the statement though. Quickly, why not?
I'd also kind of partially agree actually with the whole sugary drinks thing.
So your answer is not red then, because you had up red. So you're changing it.
I'm gonna shift to it because I think it's actually helping Jamaica to move into a more healthy movement, and I think that can actually help everybody to be more productive as well.
Okay, next question. Let's go to our next question right now. Quick answers. Jamaica actually needs higher taxes right now as opposed to borrowing. Higher taxes as opposed to borrowing. You do not agree with that, yeah. Dr. Clark. Where are you, Andrew McDaniel? You agree with that? Lovely. Let's start with what we, escaping Newton Harris. Partially agree. Okay, so we have partially agree, don't agree. Let's start with the lady.
So it's not necessarily that we need more taxes as in new tax types. What we need is more innovation, more competitiveness, so that the economic activity organically generates additional revenue flows. What the ministry really needs is more revenue, right? Not necessarily more taxes in terms of number of taxes or increased rates. It's a difficult time, though, to just expect an organic increase in tax revenues because for the reasons we all know. So these are why they're
Sounds
going
like you're preempting what Andrew McDaniel is going to say. Andrew McDaniel.
Okay.
No, the thing about it, and I want to qualify the statement, or probably provide a disclaimer by saying that I'm not asking once again at Dr. Clark for new tax measures, but I just want to justify some of the tax measures introduced to increase government revenue. Now, sin taxes are not new by any extent. I want to say that I am a proponent of the expansive welfare state, and I like to see when the most vulnerable are provided for. But this has to be funded. Some of these programs have to be funded. Now, in some Eastern European states, they use sin tax and they redirect some of this revenue directly to social welfare programs. So let's put in our local context in practical terms. The alcoholic tax, or the tax on rum, I believe, where a man go to the bar and they buy a bottle of Rare Nephew, that goes directly towards the funding for part. Or you go and you buy a cigarette, which is SET tax.
Okay,
and that
so
goes
yes, but with that disclosure provision.
Yes, so that's the
You're in the middle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why?
Because it's a very delicate balance.
Very political answer. Next question. Quick answers, guys. Literally, 10 years of economic stability hasn't delivered real growth. I'm looking.
Has not. The way these are framed is
Yeah,
very...
that's the thing.
Partially
You don't know what you're agreeing to.
You agree. I'm seeing you agree, not real growth, you agree, and you don't agree. Let's start with you this time, Newton Harris.
What are we calling real growth? I think the economists might want to on that. But what I appreciate is 10 years of stability. What did it say? 10 years of stability.
Let's repose the question. 10 years of economic stability hasn't delivered real growth.
So the growth on paper might not be impressive. And the 5 in 4, remember where we're coming from with that outlook. And so that has not materialized. The nominal has not materialized. But I think if you ask a lot of Jamaicans around the country, a lot of the services that the GDP is supposed to materialize in, you know, when you sort of break it down and explain to them, a larger economy means a larger piece of the pie for you. So when you start to look at the services that are being offered,
almost out of time, and I want to get in 2 more questions.
Jamaicans might tell you that they see growth.
Let's take one more. Ending NHT withdrawals would boost housing supply.
Ending NHT withdrawals would
ending NHT withdrawals would boost housing supply. Let me see answers. Let me see what you think. Let me see your views. Let me see the views.
Withdraw down from the budget.
No. From the NHT into the...
No. Agree. No. Okay. You're a politician. Okay, we are just about out of time. I can't get an explanation on these ones right now. But before we go, I want to come to you before we go, Catherine Silvera. The opposition leader speaks tomorrow. The Prime Minister speaks later this week on Thursday. What do you want to hear from both of them? What must they say?
I think both of them need to speak to proposed growth strategies, because taxation is not a growth strategy. It's a means to ends right now to close the gap in terms of the deficit that the budget is facing. We need to understand from government and from the opposition what strategies do they have in mind for both public and private sector partnerships that is going to help Jamaica grow at a faster rate than we have over the past 10 years.
Thank you so much, Catherine Silvera, President of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association. What must they say, Dr. Clark?
Well, I think we are going to see the opposition leader really kind of hit a few